Thank you. It's so good to be with you here tonight. I'm François Otolomani, I'm the Dean of London Business School, and I'm delighted to host you in the David and Molly Pyatt Lecture Theatre in the Batia Ofer Center. Great achievements of our first campaign that allowed us to have such a world-class facility to welcome you tonight. You know that as a business school, we really care to train the future leaders of the world. This campaign, Forward Forward, is about amplifying our impact to the people we train, building on the research of our faculty. But it's a lot more. It's about acknowledging that in today's world environment, philanthropy is essential if we're going to address the biggest issues that we see around us as human beings. And so tonight we're so honored that we have these three amazingly successful individuals who are building on their success to make a difference for us all with their extreme generosity. And I hope, and I told them already, that tonight will be an inspiration for all of us as to the power of philanthropy to address so many of the issues that we see around us. Now, you're also nice. I mean, it's a well-known trick, a little bit of a noise on glass, and people quiet down. But I want to wake you up before I hand over to them, and I thought I would ask you a little question, if you don't mind. Pull out your phones, it's okay. Pull out your phones. And you know how it works. Our students know this very well. You take a photo and hit go to Slido. It's just a simple question. I mean, it's self-explanatory. Have you given a gift? And I know it's not the end of the year yet, and not everyone has done their charitable giving because of tax planning is linked to a calendar year. But yeah, have you given a gift to a charitable organization in 2023? And while you answer, maybe I invite our panelists to come forward. Thank you, Linda, for moderating the panel with Badr Jafar, so Lloyd Dorfman, and of course, Batia Ofer. Thank you so much. There's more than 24 of you. Thank you for answering, and Linda, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to kick us off. So firstly, I'm Linda Yu. I am lucky enough to be adjunct professor of economics here at the school, and it is my absolute pleasure to be moderating this discussion. So it is really fitting that we're here. It's the first anniversary of the £200 million campaign at the school, and we can enjoy, a lot of the, as Francois said, a lot of the fruits of people's support. And I think that is one of the themes that we'll discuss today, which is the power of philanthropy. Now, you may be thinking, gosh, we've got, geopolitics going on with Russia, we've got a cost of living crisis, we have, a number of things. But actually, the theme of what we're going to discuss tonight is the power of philanthropy to contribute to solving some of the world's biggest problems. And we all have a role to play. And we just have an absolutely fantastic panel that I'm going to introduce, but actually their bios are on your tables, and I'm going to do this rather briefly because I think they each of them have done very inspirational things to contribute to solving some of these big problems that we are confronting. So, let me start with my left. So we're joined by, I'm proud to say, LBS Executive Education alumnus, Badr Jafar, CEO of Preston Enterprises and founder of the Pearl Initiative. Badr is also a member of the Giving Pledge, an organization which recognizes individuals who are committed to giving the majority of their wealth to address some of society's most pressing problems. And then to his left, I'm very delighted to welcome Batia Ofer, art collector, philanthropist, You might have seen a profile of her in the Times just very recently. She founded and runs her own charity, The Art of Wishes, an organization which grants wishes to children with life-threatening medical conditions. And of course, her family's generosity is certainly evident in this beautiful building that we're sitting in. So thank you very much. And then to her left is Sir Lloyd Dorfman, founder of Travel-X Group, entrepreneur and philanthropist. Lloyd's name is associated with lots of things, including some of the biggest philanthropic partnerships in the UK. And he has quite an eclectic philanthropic portfolio, which I'm looking forward to hearing how he has accumulated such an interesting. And his face tells me there's good stories behind that, behind his choices. So let me just kick off. Let me just remind you of the running order. So I'm going to be in conversation with these panelists for about 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be a chance for Q&A. So we'd love to hear your insights, your thoughts, and questions that you would like to pose to this lovely group of people. So I'm going to just kick off with what does philanthropy mean to you in practice? And why and how has it ended up playing such a central role in each of your lives? I think ladies first. Batia.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me here first. So philanthropy for me personally means not actually just checkbook philanthropy, not just writing a check, but also putting time, effort, expertise, and I think this is the common thread with the three of us sitting here tonight. So it's not just merely giving money away, but also trying to make an impact and really investing your time, being passionate about it. For me, philanthropy started from a personal story, even though giving has always been part of my life. Even when I was a little girl, I was volunteering in Israel when there was the Ethiopian immigration, and then in the army, I was an injured soldier commander. So caring about people and empathy has always been a part of my life, but then through a personal loss, I really started being more involved in philanthropy when I lost my youngest sister. And that's when I started working with Make-A-Wish and ultimately found Art of Wishes. So,
thank you. Lovely. The lesson there might be being in the army is probably quite good training for lots of things.
Yes, but I mean, even in my army service, I wasn't in combat. It was more, I was visiting soldiers. I was in hospitals. That's how I spent 2 years of my service.
Wow.
Visiting soldiers that were injured in their service, and I actually encountered death as well. So it was quite a heart-wrenching time in my life, but I think it brought me in my journey to do what I do today, which is my work with Make-A-Wish.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that in a moment. Thank you very much, Batia. Lloyd, so tell us.
So, look, I think success at any level, I think, brings responsibility. And I was always taken by the great scientist Albert Einstein. Had this great saying, which was that it's the obligation of every man to put back into this world at least the equivalent of what he takes out. And I think, whatever you do in life, at whatever level you achieve success, I think to put back, and as Batia says, it's not just about money, it's about time, it's about experience. Charities, in whatever shape or form they are, as we said earlier, these are organizations. It would be good if the income exceeded the expenditure. This is not, normally a straight line journey. And they get issues and they have problems. And, I think if you bring a wealth of experience from other things that you've done, then, there's an opportunity to add real value. And, in my experience, across all the different things that I got involved in, which is quite an eclectic mix, I've been a donor, I've been a fundraiser, I've been a sponsor, I've been a trustee, I've been a chairman, I've seen charities in the best of times, and I've seen charities in the worst of times. And actually, the more challenging the more challenging it is, actually, the more fulfilling and interesting it is. So, and I think it's important, it's fulfilling, it's a responsibility, and also it's enjoyable. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to put something back.
Yeah, I think that's very, very well put. Lloyd and I met because of his involvement in the Prince's Trust and Prince's Trust International, and I'm the chair of the Royal Commonwealth Society. My husband describes my volunteering as my hobby. And I thought, oh God, I got to get better hobbies. Same question to you, Badr. Why is philanthropy so central in your life?
So thank you, first of all, to LBS for hosting us here, and to you and your family for enabling this wonderful building that we're in. So as I think many will know, philanthropy is an age-old human practice. Been practiced probably ever since humans were getting together in groups. Comes from, as again many will know, the Greek roots, philo and anthropos, or the love of humanity, which the Romans translated into humanitas, which just means humanness, and synonymous with charity, or caritas, the Latin for altruistic love. I think the traditional sort of form of altruism, which actually comes from a root, or a Latin root, for pityness, or taking pity on someone, which I don't like, but it has the connotation is that you give to those who are less fortunate, which is extremely important. But philanthropy today, and I think the excitement around the role that philanthropy can play, and more specifically strategic philanthropy, is moving from that more traditional role of almsgiving to a more strategic role, which involves really impact-driven, evidence-based, disciplined, both research, analysis, and discipline in implementation and follow-through to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. And in many respects, this is not different to, and sometimes controversial comparison, but not too different to, from a discipline perspective, to strategic investing, right? Where, again, not for financial returns, in this case it would be for social or environmental returns, but the rigor associated with it is, I think, similar. And so this, for me, is where I think charity and strategic philanthropy need to work in tandem. There's a place for both. But personally, what I'm most excited about is the realm of strategic philanthropy, because I think that for too often, philanthropy was seen as the forgotten child of the capital system, often seen as something that happens on the peripheries, and in many parts of the world, often regarded with a really high degree of skepticism. And so this is, and the Middle East is one place, at least the Arab region is one place which that happens. But as we know from a quantum perspective, philanthropy is disbursed in the trillions every year. So even if you take the lower end of the estimate of about $1 trillion a year, that's more than triple the combined annual humanitarian and development aid budgets of the world put together. I mean, to put in perspective, total ODA, overseas development assistance, of all sort of wealthy countries in terms of government aid is around $100 billion a year, 150 or so billion a year. This is $1 trillion. But it's not just the $1 trillion on its own. It's the quality of that capital, which is also exciting, which is why it's often referred to as catalytic capital. It's more patient, it's more equitable in its deployment, it's more risk tolerant, so it can act as a catalyst to create a multiplier effect when combined with business and government capital. And this is, again, precisely is what's required when we see these huge numbers associated with resolving many of our global challenges. Big one, of course, today with COP28 just around the corner in the UAE, with climate and nature, climate change and nature loss, with the $4 trillion a year that's required between now and 2050 to reach our goals, it simply won't happen with the current tools that we have. So this is where I think philanthropy can play a critical role. I think it's a super exciting time for it.
Great examples, thank you. So Batia, if I could come to you, and do say a bit more about, how you select the areas that you focus on in your philanthropy.
Okay, so first, passion is very important, and we have some long-term strategic goals that we focus on. But then you have to be with the finger on the pulse to what's happening in the world. So, for example, Ukraine has become important to us in the last year. It wasn't something that we thought that that will be part of our philanthropic journey, but with everything that happened there, through one of our companies, we have around 400 refugees living in Bulgaria right now. So in the shipping, a lot of the sailors are Ukrainian, so we brought them and their families. So for example, this is something that obviously we didn't envision happening. Now with what's happening in Israel, we are focused on NGOs that are focusing on fostering democratic and liberal values. So on the one hand, we have long-term goals, climate change, leadership, education, health, the arts. And then every once in a while, we sort of step off the trajectory and start helping other causes that we didn't think of. So it stems from a passion, but also, we are cognizant of what's happening in the world. And that's how we do it.
Yeah, no, it's a great approach. Just linking to what Badr said about strategic philanthropy. So, an asset management, right? You've got your thematic long-term investments, and then you have tactical, investments in the short term to address pressing issues. So actually, I think both of your approaches are actually very similar. When I come to Lloyd, you mentioned earlier, great power, great responsibility. Isn't that from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility.
That's a great success. With success comes responsibility.
Okay.
Success brings responsibility.
All right, so you're not Spider-Man after all. I was getting very excited. Spider-Man got it from you. So you have quite a broad portfolio. So how do you choose where you focus your energy, your impact?
Well, I'd like to be able to show you a great sort of strategic document that sets out the very cleverly thought out plan about how I will get involved in all these things. But in the real world of how this happens, that's not how it happened. Most of them have been a journey. Broadly they divide into sort of young people, culture, Jewish community, and then medical. And I'm sort of post facto rationalising it. I was front up. You don't want to hear me say this, by the way, but I didn't go to business school. I didn't go to university. I sort of somehow managed. You can manage if you don't go to business school or university.
Is this being recorded?
I'm not advocating that you shouldn't, please. I don't want to offend my host, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying if by any chance you don't, there's still life afterwards.
You can edit the video, right?
Just imagine the 10x of Lloyd if he went to LBS.
Exactly.
Scary thought.
Thank you, Badr.
Exactly. In truth, they're quite an eclectic mix, and I often say, I don't want to sort of over-intellectualize it. They pretty well UK focused. I was born here, I live here, I care about here, and I feel I can make a sort of bigger impact here. The one exception probably would be Prince's Trust International, but I was involved with Prince's Trust for 20 years. I ended up chairing it. Then Prince's Trust International, the then Prince was keen to take Prince's Trust around the world. He said to me, Lloyd, you're good at building things, build me the world. And So you sort of get told to do that. You know, we know there's conversations. I'm looking at Shoshana, and that was a startup. So I have done things internationally, but within this country, you know, they've all been journeys, and you know, my relationship with the National Theatre, for example, you know, where there is a Dorfman theatre, you know, began over a stupid conversation over dessert at a dinner party. And that, you know, did I know then that would end up in us sponsoring the Travel Cheap Ticket season? I ended up on the board, and then I ended up being the lead donor, and there's a Dorfman theatre at the National Theatre. You know, from nowhere I ended up being involved in Westminster Abbey, the first building project at Westminster Abbey for 275 years. That was an amazing experience. You know, John, Jill's husband, was also involved in it. And from that, I ended up being approached by St. Paul's Cathedral, and I ended up being involved in leading and designing COVID memorial, both an online one and a physical one. And, you know, I ended up being the sort of Jewish desk for abbeys and cathedrals. And, you know, I think with the Jewish community, you know, I'm deputy chairman of a charity called Community Security Trust, which fights anti-Semitism and protects the community. I'm a trustee of the Holocaust Memorial Foundation, which is trying to build a Holocaust memorial next to the Houses of Parliament, which is not without its controversy, but I think we'll get there in the end. You know, and we've done things at Great Ormond Street and Marsden, and there's sort of personal stories behind that. And I'm now chairing the Opera House, which is not without its challenges. And I was chairman of the Roundhouse, just to give you the other end of the musical spectrum. Yeah, and I've just come off the board of BAFTA, I've just come off the board of the Royal Academy. So I sort of, you know, but I enjoy it, you know, it's interesting. No, but I couldn't, I mean, don't do things you don't enjoy. I mean, they're time consuming enough, so if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. But, you know, I come to these things, you know, I built around an operationally intensive global business. I understand a set of management accounts, and it's good if the income exceeds the expenditure. You know, it's not difficult. Trying to make it happen is the challenge. Anyway, that's me.
Wow, fantastic stories. Thank you. Badr, can I come to you? You've set up a number of strategic philanthropy centers in different parts of the world. Just tell us about why you've done that and a bit more about it.
How on earth does anyone follow that? No, very inspirational, truly. I am very excited about the potential, again, for strategic philanthropy, and specifically within the so-called emerging markets, or what I prefer to refer to as the global growth markets, where the majority of new net wealth creation and growth will happen in the coming few decades. And for me, without the right infrastructure, which is that sort of enabling environment upon which philanthropy can thrive, we're just not going to see this sector do anywhere near or reach anywhere near its true potential. So what does infrastructure mean? I mean, the analogy I sometimes use is it's not so much giving fish or teaching to fish, both of which are very important. For me, it's about the tools, providing and creating and providing the right tools for fishing. So there's the rods, the nets. I won't get too deep into that analogy, but and so there are various ways that one can do that. The regulatory environment is extremely important. As we know, in many of these jurisdictions, institutional philanthropy is smothered because it's very, very difficult to even register a charity or a foundation or a non-profit, and therefore a lot of giving happens kind of underground, which still achieves some results, but in my view, it's muted impact. And in some cases, it's even potentially destructive impact, unintentionally, right? When there's no ways to track or to trace where the money is going. And we're talking, even if you take a tiny percentage of money, just take Islamic philanthropy as just one example, or Islamic almsgiving. Anywhere between zakat and sadaqah is anywhere between $400 billion to $1 trillion a year. okay? If you ask me, and I've commissioned research and done, you know, as much as one can do to try and track and trace where that money's going, we could maybe come up with answers to a very small percentage of that. So the vast majority of that is happening so-called under the radar. If a small amount of that, the term leakage in the kind of corporate kind of, you know, world, money goes out of where it's supposed to go, can you imagine how much destruction that can create if it ends up in the wrong hands? And it sometimes does. So again, the urgency to do better and to channel it in the right ways is important. For me, again, various ways to do it. One of the ways I've been working and partnering with various universities to help to create centers for strategic philanthropy. University of Cambridge was one of the first, NYU in Abu Dhabi. There are two which will happen hopefully this year, one in South Africa and one in developing Asia that will hopefully be announced. But they all have three pillars to them. So there's the research piece, which is, again, understanding the past, present, and future of philanthropic giving. The second is convening, so bringing people together from not just the kind of philanthropic sector, but all sectors to understand what philanthropic capital, the role that philanthropic capital can play to enhance these outcomes, social and environmental. And the third piece is the education piece, so workshops and executive education programs, again, not just for philanthropic practitioners or philanthropy practitioners, but anybody in the social sector and anybody who engages with the social sector. Then there are many other ways to do it. I mean, media is a very important one, so I've partnered with various media establishments to actually place journalists, philanthropy journalists in different parts of the world. We've got something like 30 or 40 of them now in different parts of the world, and they just create this repository of stories. Not all good, right? Because we also need to know what doesn't work.
Yeah, of course.
But very, very important. And you see this amazing, just sort of goldmine of stories and things that are happening that nobody knew about. So in terms of inspiration and setting examples for others to follow, this is critical. Digital platforms are extremely important. So I mentioned Islamic philanthropy, created a digital platform, non-profit, actually a charity registered in the UK, because we didn't have the right registration opportunities back home. So again, trying to channel even a small percentage of that Islamic alms giving to causes around the world. So these are some ways to help to enhance, if you will, the philanthropic infrastructure.
So fascinating. The different approaches are just so fascinating. But Batia, I want to ask you about the art of wishes. You are actually one of the, most renowned art collectors. Just talk to us about the impact of art and how you founded this charity and what you're doing with it.
So Art of Wishes was actually found from bringing together my two passions. So I'm really, really passionate about art as an art collector, and I'm also passionate about fulfilling as many wishes as we can at Make-A-Wish for children living with a critical illness. By the way, Gil, my stepson, is the one that took me to the first Make-A-Wish event in Israel, and it was shortly a few months after my sister passed away. And that's when I started getting involved with Make-A-Wish. So I was involved with Make-A-Wish Israel for a few years while we were still living in Israel. I started from chairing a circle of friends and doing a yearly event, and then I started doing auctions in combination with Sotheby's in a local gallery over there. And when we moved to the UK, I thought, well, how can I carry on this journey in the UK? And make the biggest impact. And I realized that my strength lies within the art world. I mean, that's where I have the greatest relationships. And how can I leverage these relationships to raise as much money as I can for children? And the way I see it is that this network that I'm bringing into Make-A-Wish, it's a privilege for them to be part of this journey. So I started meeting with galleries and artists and to convince them to embark upon this journey with me. I had the first event in 2017 where we raised over £2.5 million. Up to date, we have raised £9 million. We have the next gala coming up on October 9th. In this event, we have 31 artists contributing, but really amazing artists. The way I look at it when I put the gala together, or the auction together, is what Lloyd said before. I mean, you bring your experience. The way I run Art of Wishes is I look at it as a business. And how do I perform in the best possible way? And for me to perform in the best possible way is to have a win-win situations for everyone. So it's keeping the artist happy, it's keeping the donors happy, it's bringing the best expertise to the table. So I do it in collaboration with the auction houses. This year it's Christie's. I've done it with Sotheby's and Phillips in the past. So I actually look at it as, I run it as a business in a way, but obviously with a lot of passion. I love it. I mean, I think when you do anything in life, when you do it with passion and dedication, you have a much higher chances of succeeding. So,
wow, no, absolutely fascinating. It just strikes me how you're all so different, but you're similar in a number of ways. Don't worry, it's not a quiz after the panel, but all of you have mentioned education in a slightly different way from Lloyd, but given that we're here at the school, it'd be really interesting to hear you're supporting education. Obviously, you do support education in other ways, I think. Princess Trust International, for instance, very big on, helping disadvantaged, young people, and I think, so is there something about education that really interests you and thinks that's how we can, make these connections to make philanthropy have a greater impact? Got to start with you, Lloyd.
Right. So, I mean, I actually left out that I was also a governor of my old school for 11 years. I went to St. Paul's School, so I went to quite a good school. And I ended up becoming a governor, and I also ended up being the lead donor when they began their rebuilding of the school, which began about, 10, 12 years ago. And I also gave a percentage of my donation towards kicking off the bursary fund, because the idea of helping talented young people who couldn't afford to go to a school like St. Paul's, that was important. So at that level, I sort of done my education bit. As far as Princess Trust is concerned, I mean, I first got involved in it 20 odd years ago when I wanted to mark what was then the 25th anniversary of when I founded Travelex, by trying to find a way to help young people who perhaps didn't have some of the sort of middle-class education advantages that I had, to help them start a business. And I was introduced, taken along faithfully, to have an early evening drink with the wonderful late Sir Angus Ogilvie, the husband of Princess Alexandra, who'd worked very closely with the then Prince of Wales in founding, in the early days of Princess Trust. And sort of I got involved in it that way, and then gradually got involved ended up heading the development fundraising committee, joining the board, and spending time helping disadvantaged, vulnerable young people get into some form of education, training, or employment, and to start businesses. And the sort of, why was that appealing? That was appealing because to help young people sort of at the beginning of their lives to try and become economically self-sufficient, that seemed a good and important thing to do. He then wanted to take it internationally, which was the Princess Trust International part of it. So, I think, I look back at that time and, I stood in rooms and heard these amazing people stand up and tell their stories about how they were drug addicts and abused and ended up in prison, and somehow as they were sort of going down for the last time, somehow they got a helping hand or met somebody from the Princess Trust, and their life was transformed. And not that we need to be reminded of those sorts of stories, but when you're in the room and you hear these people tell them firsthand, it's very humbling. So that's the education thing is important, and today, I don't know if any of you sort of are trustees or governors of schools of any shape or form, but it comes with huge responsibility today. When I first joined the board of St Paul's back in 2004, the governors met once a term. We were about to embark on what was then £120 million rebuilding project. And it was me who'd said one day, do you think if we're going to embark on this £120 million rebuilding project, we should meet more than 3 times a year? And they thought that was a good idea. Right? So we sort of did, and it's totally different today, and brings with it huge responsibility. Anyway, enough from me.
No, very important. I want to open up to questions in just a moment, but just if you wanted to add anything.
I mean, education is the foundation of all human development and success. Unless, of course, you're Sir Lloyd, in which case it comes naturally. But and obviously, health being the other one, as they say, without health you got nothing, which is why, and it's not surprising that in most parts of the world, the majority of philanthropy and almsgiving goes towards health and education. In the Middle East, this is a real challenge in many respects. We have some of the highest educated youth in the world, but some of the highest rates of unemployment in the world. And this is a challenge with education more broadly, which is the education system is being challenged today. Is it keeping up with the skills that we need for the future? Is it sort of, or can we afford to allow it to be set perhaps for a different era where technical skills are more important than today, which I think we're rapidly realizing human skills, or building the human being, is far more important to address and prepare for a very uncertain future. So I have been privileged to work with a number of universities and support various activities, including creation of business school, AUS, and executive education programs, working with the likes of AUB, and then schools. And the other piece is, again, as we know, when you think education, and this is really to Sir Lloyd's point, is education is a lifelong journey, right? It's, yes, you can get certified and get certifications, and that's important still in today's job market. Less so, depending on what job you're seeking. In some cases, I hear it counts against you these days. But how do you then create systems for education where people can continue to be inspired, to learn from one another, and not necessarily rely on traditional institutions for those learnings and inspirations? So how can we create it such that society is that seat for learning and for inspiration? And this is, I think, particularly crucial and important in some parts of the world where we don't have some of that infrastructure, and it may take too long if we wait for that infrastructure to come and address situations where you have 40% youth unemployment. Because this is, it's an existential threat to the stability of the overall society and therefore economies for billions of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think lifelong learning, this is music to our ears. I think that's what the school is very focused on. And absolutely, learning is formal and it's informal. Oh, no, it's formal. But lifelong learning is skills development, is learning from each other. There's a lot of things, which, music to our ears. Okay, I better open up to questions. So microphones will be coming around. I'm going to gather 3 questions and then have the panel answer the questions. I think Nina and Annalise was going to pop down and grab a couple of the microphones. So I think I see a hand up right there. Yep, a hand up right there. And, okay, now there's a lot of hands. So I think here, and then, we'll just do 4 in one round. So here, please, and then we'll come around. Yes, please introduce yourself. Tell us your name and what you do.
Thank you so much. My name is Richard Greenhalgh. I chair 3 charitable organisations, and I've been sitting here getting more and more confused, really, about what a philanthropist really is. Because of my 3 charities, one of them is the second largest charity in the country, or third maybe now, and it's 100% funded by government. I've got a second one.
Which one is it?
United Learning. It has 92 academies around the UK.
Yeah.
The second one is called Hope and Homes for Children, which is 100% funded by individuals and corporates. And that's dedicated to the closing of all the orphanages around the world. And the third one is British Youth Opera, which is a mixture of a little bit of government funding through the Arts Council, and the rest is individuals. And I'm just wondering here, what is a philanthropist? Can a philanthropist be an organization, or is it always an individual? And if it's an organization, does it have to be a private organization, or can it be government in some form or other? And then finally, really, is how big do you have to be as a donor to be a proper philanthropist? In a way? So in my British Youth Opera, I've got quite a few members who give perhaps £50 a year and have done for 20 years. They might be just as much a philanthropist in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
As the ones who give more.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a rather long question.
No, that's fine. I mean, they were informative. If you pass your mic down, there we go. And then I'll pick up you two. Yeah, please introduce yourself. And also, what year have you went to the LBS?
So my name is James Penny. I was Sloan 98, and this institution helped move me from a theology professor to a fund manager, banker, and strategy consultant. So education can work.
We've got that recorded, right?
Whether that in the right way or not, I don't know. I have part of the question which is similar to what Richard asked, which is to Badr's point about the amount of money that's created through philanthropy. Is there a risk that governments reduce the amount they do because they see us as philanthropists taking over that mantle? And the more that we give, the less they feel the need to promote, education being a classic example of that. I also chair a multi-academy trust, so I know exactly some of the things that Richard talks about. And the second sort of related question to your final point is, there are a lot of parallels, I think, in what you've been talking about between philanthropy and entrepreneurship. Is philanthropy like entrepreneurship? Can you teach it, or are you born a philanthropist?
Great questions. Please.
Should we just continue the questions, or?
Yeah, we're just going to carry on. These questions are great. They're more comments, really.
Testing our memory.
So, first of all, thank you for being here, taking our time, and for sharing your stories and the amazing work that you do. My name is Farhan. I was Executive MBA 2019, and I'm now the founder of SARE, which was born at London Business School's Entrepreneurship Summer School, in this building. And so what we are doing is building the ecosystem for the underserved South Asian classical music market. And I keep hearing generally and today about health and food and education, how, of course, that's very important. But I also heard today about culture and arts, and I would assume that includes music. Why is that so important?
Thank you. Great question as well. And we'll just pick you up as well, and then we'll turn to the panel.
Hello. Hi, my name is Eran Eitan. I am currently doing the Sloan. I'm just having a transformative time in LBS. My question is, all of you are doing a significant work in the social impact, and it seems that some of the stuff are correlated or linked together. And my question is there a place for collective impact in the area of philanthropies?
Yeah, great questions. Lloyd, we have one microphone left here, so do comment where you like.
Or not. Right. Okay, here we go. So, what is a philanthropist? Well, I think a philanthropist is essentially an individual who opts to donate money in support of causes. I think corporates, they pursue their own philanthropic agendas. They have CSR programs, and today, a lot of corporate giving is structured around CSR agendas. Strategies and objectives that they want to achieve as companies. They often get their workforces to vote for the charities that they want to pursue. And that's terrific, and there's a lot of them, and it's important they do that. But I think a philanthropist is an individual. Somebody, there are lots of people who aren't in a position to support. There are a lot of people who can support and don't support at all or enough. I think the people who do look to make a difference, I think those people are worthy of note. So, I don't know if your comment or question was meant cynically, but I think, it's about being an individual. Can you teach it? I think you can teach it. And I think, hopefully, whether our comments today spark anything, I don't know. I think you can teach it, but also, it's something about the spirit of giving. And yes, at the high levels, high strategic level, and, we can look to, this is important. But at the end of the day, it comes from your heart as well as your head. And I think particularly with first generation entrepreneurs, I didn't have any money when I started, it sort of became more successful, and I'd like to do something. So, and I think, Batia, your family, a great example, first generation philanthropists do it from the head, from the heart as well as the head. It's interesting to see how second, third generations of those families continue that responsibility, and it's wonderful to hear that your family have embraced that, and I'm sure your case too. But I do think it's about the spirit of giving, and I think people shouldn't lose sight of the emotional side of it. And intellectually we can talk about it all day long, but at the end of the day, certainly as far as I'm concerned, I get attracted to those causes that mean something to me, that there's been some sort of personal connection. Some of them, the Westminster Abbey Cathedral, St Paul's Cathedral stories was a bit off piece, but actually they became really interesting things to do, and for a whole host of reasons, really important to me. And I remember, just as an aside, I remember being at Westminster Abbey in a cold December morning when we were about to lay the foundation stone of this building project, which was to build what was called the Triforium Tower, which basically contains a staircase and a lift, which takes people up to the first floor of the Abbey, from which they were going to display all the artifacts they have at the Abbey that nobody ever gets to see. And it was a £24 million project. There were about 30 donors. Of the 30 donors, there were six Jewish families who contributed to this. You need to remember that there are 270,000 Jews in this country. And I remember walking through, we were waiting for the Prince of Wales, who was coming to lay the foundation stone, and I was there with another one of my slightly older fellow Jewish donors, and we're walking through the Westminster Abbey, and we're laughing to each other. We're saying, what are two nice Jewish boys doing on a Friday morning walking through Westminster Abbey? And my fellow Jewish donor, he stopped me and he said, Lloyd, he said, I think it's really important that we do this. He said, because this is a way of saying thank you to this country that opened its arms to our forefathers all those generations ago and gave them an opportunity to make of their lives what they will in a free and democratic society. And I thought that was a really important thing to do. So you can teach it, but it's important to not forget the spirit of it.
Lloyd, I might, in the interest of
Oh, sure.
time, but we were testing your memory. That is very good. Batia, can I get you to pick up? We're just actually we're out of time, but please.
So I will talk about why is art or music or any of that important. So where would we be as humans or as a society if just think of a world with no music, no art, no theater, no ballet, no opera, no art? I think art helps us evolve. It helps us progress. It opens our mind. Obviously, it has psychological benefits as well when you look at art. But I think part of our progression as a society has to do with art. I mean, even and I think it's a need. If even cavemen, used to draw. So I think it's an integral part of society. And yes, it might seem as a luxury when there's hunger, when health, etc., education. But I truly believe that it is an integral part of our development as a society for a better future.
Yeah, very well put. Badr, final word to you. You know the last question, which remains collective impact, which I think is right up your alley anyways.
Is it? So I will just quickly touch on, so I don't like the term so much. And the reason I don't is because I think it misses out on so much more of what it can represent, of what it represents today and what it can represent increasingly going forward. This is a problem with nomenclature, right? I mean, it's made words that were created for a different era and they carry, but the idea that this is sort of super wealthy people who give back a bit of their money, this is a pity if this is all it's seen as. But the model is being challenged. Technology is having a huge role to play. We are moving increasingly from a one-to-many model, like rich people giving to many individuals, to a many-to-one model. Which, and you're one of your, I think the second charity you talked about is an example of that. The big numbers I talked about is $1 trillion of zakat and sadaqah. Over 80% of that is made up of donations of less than $100 a year. But you're talking about a community of 2 billion people. They're all philanthropists. So I would quite like to, and I'm working on this project in Arabic. In Arabic, we don't have a word for a philanthropist. We have a word, I mean, it's two words, and it's basically, the literal translation is he who or she who does good. But we need something more creative to define what it means or to describe what it means. I quite like to see a name in English that, all these new terms that are coming up in the English language is great at that, right? To Uber something or to Google something. A word that, again, describes that act. As you mentioned, and like with entrepreneurship, you say some people have a flair, but there's certain technical skills to do things well, and I think those can be taught. Art is the connective tissue of our society, and all innovation happens, as we know, all stories of innovation and really these renaissances, but from the Islamic Golden Age, the European Renaissance, hundreds of years later, happen at the intersection of humanities and science. And so the art really is what made that happen. And it's the connective tissue. It's the lifeblood of our society. So it's obviously critical. And it's lost in many of our old traditional societies, and we need to bring it back. The last one was...
It's okay, I'll do that. I'll do that.
Great, thank you.
So I was, for 9 years, a trustee of the Quds Foundation, and the way to have impact on the causes and consequences of poverty was not only to support organizations, but to link up with other funders and to link the organizations with each other. And that's the collective impact. Together you can do more than individually. And actually, we are completely out of time, but before I hand over to Francois, who is actually right there, I'm just going to 30 seconds. What is your piece of advice for anyone thinking about embarking on a life of giving back? Just a single bit of advice.
I've sort of already said it, but I mean, just do it. Don't drive yourself mad. Don't look to boil the ocean. Just pick some causes that really mean something to you, where you care, you're concerned, you feel you can make a difference, and whatever financial contribution you want to make, just do it. Get involved, get the experience. It'll be a beginning of a journey. All these things are a journey. You'll find it very fulfilling, very worthwhile, and actually quite interesting. So just get on with it.
Well, find your passion, follow it. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. You only learn from it. And it is very fulfilling. So
Just enjoy it and give to LBS.
I have nothing to add to that, except to say, please join me in thanking this incredible panel.
So you stole my thunder, but no, because I was going to say I love the advice. Just do it, get on with it, find your passion. And the thing is, if you don't know what your passion is, you're welcome to borrow mine. Yeah, but I just want to acknowledge the power of what I heard from you tonight. And there's a way in which we started by talking very much as business people. Structure, network, entrepreneurism, capital allocation, right? But we ended up where, Batia, you started us with that passion, that joy, that human element of who we are. And how is it that together we can make a difference in the world around us in so many dimensions? And so thank you so much for sharing that experience with us and your perspective. We did have a business objective for tonight, and we love measuring outcomes. So there's a follow-up question. And the follow-up question is, 96% of you said that you had already made a contribution to a charity in 2023. And I'm sure the 4%, they are like the US citizens who are waiting for December for the tax seasons to figure out how much they need to give. And I just wanted to ask you is, out of tonight in the panel, did you hear something? Is this panel going to help you inspire others around you to get on the journey of giving? So did you grab something tonight? Did you get something tonight that will help you inspire others to join on the journey? And that is my hope for all of you, and that's what I hope the school is doing with its campaign, inspiring many to come together in support of our school, but to come together as human beings and inspiring philanthropy to all types of causes. With that, I want to thank all of you for coming tonight, and I think we now invited to a reception so we can continue the conversation, and it's going to be Lower Link Bridge. And when we get there, I won't resist the chance to tell you what is so wonderful about this building, and maybe something else you can take with you tonight. Thank you so much. See you downstairs.